Make real change. Make change real. The process is beautiful. Empower your mentality, make real change in the world. This is Michael. Um, my athletes used to call me Coach King, and Coach Luzar called me Coach King. So I kind of adopted that name. That's not a name that I gave to myself. Okay, that's something that somebody else named me. So I'm not self-proclaimed coach. This is what people have always called me, especially after college. Well, meanwhile, in college is when I actually discovered that I do coach people, that I do train people, and I became more aware of that situation. I think the first time that it happened to me, I believe, was 2010. I kind of take it back so that I can move forward. 2010, during the summer, we had to train a couple athletes in the shot put, and a lot of people don't know how to strike the shot put. People don't know how to. The high school athletes don't know how to actually throw the implement. Some people want to throw it like a shoulder, but throw like a baseball, but you can't do that with 12 pounds. You can't do that with 8 pounds. You'll tear everything in your shoulder trying to do that. So teaching athletes how to properly strike the implement was so important for me. So I was helping this particular athlete in northern Michigan, and he could not strike the ball to save his life, or strike the implement or the shot. And so I just worked with him, taught him the fundamentals, and I mean, that kid ended up being a 45-foot thrower just out of nowhere, just from the front of the toe board. His coach emailed my coach and was like, could you tell the guy that worked with that athlete, Michael, that I've seen so many improvements in the way he threw just from that one session. It was 2 hours. I spent 2 hours with this kid, and he was a 40-foot thrower just in 2 hours. So I discovered this passion to help young athletes at an early age. But I never considered myself a coach then. I'm just helping. You know what I'm saying? Helping people get better. This kid had, the drive, and he wanted to learn. And you know how kids look at you innocently? With kids kind of like, tell me everything, sensei. So this kid had that look on his face like, tell me everything, sensei. And so I showed him everything. I showed him everything that I was taught, plus a little bit of kind of what I learned, and, gave him the tips to sustain that. And so he was able to blossom into this thrower. And then I translated that into throws coaching and volunteering at my high school. And I went back, and my coaches would call me and say, hey, Michael, we got a kid that could potentially, go to states. Would you want to work with him? And I said, absolutely. Is he a worker? Tell me about him. How's his academics? Does he have good grades? What is his goals? Does he want to throw at the next level? Is he big? Does he have quickness? Like there's all these questions I asked the coaches, and they're like, yeah, man, we think he could do it. And so a couple of them I worked with. One ended up being an NFL superstar, won a Super Bowl championship. Another one went to Notre Dame, kind of worked with him for a little bit, and just taught him everything I knew, just kind of the mentality. Those guys had the speed, the strength, everything. And the funny thing is it was a gold mine, and I didn't even realize it because I was actually still competing in college at a Division I level. So they wanted me to come back, work with them, and kind of give them a kind of shot in the arm as to what to do. I'm not going to name drop on my channel because, these guys have big money careers, big money at stake, and they were very affluent, and, but they know who they are. And I work with those two particular offensive linemen, and, at the time I didn't know what they would become. I didn't know that they would become Super Bowl champions and a Congress leader. I didn't know that. All I know is what I saw in them as athletes. One was very in the sports, very hardworking, dedicated, worked like an animal, had that drive and that just mentality for sport. The other one had a very technical brain. He knew what he wanted to train, and he knew what he wanted to do. and you couldn't get him to do exactly what you wanted him to do because he was so smart that whatever he could put his mind to, that's what he would do. But he was also so physically just naturally gifted. So that came kind of just because of his size. You know what I mean? But the kid had a bigger brain than he did talent. And that's speaking a lot because he was a Division 1, ranked number 4 offensive lineman. You get what I'm saying? In college. But his brain was so much bigger. He knew that about himself. And so, but it was just an honor to work with both of those athletes at that time. And what I'm saying is, which is going to kind of segue me into this topic, which is awareness. I posted something on my Facebook about awareness, and more leaders, better leaders are aware. And awareness, how it fits into the idea is that we have to become more aware. So before we talk about innovation, before we talk about growth, we have to talk about awareness. Because real change does not begin with action. It begins with seeing. So today I want to talk to you about and walk with you through this topic called awareness, and it being the first act of innovation. So we're dialing all the way back. I like to look at things and pinpoint them. So the I in idea is an innovation. And so let's pinpoint it. Let's go back. Okay. So why acknowledgement must come before the execution of the idea or the I. And so this is where I introduced this thing called the idea cycle of change. This is where the idea cycle of change, your actual process, the process is beautiful, actually begins in this cycle. I found that there's a pattern to the idea. Okay. And I'm going to be walking through this next year about the pattern in this cycle of change, this idea cycle. And so the idea of change is just the skeleton. It's a method. It's a framework, right? But the idea cycle is the actual process. It's the process that we take, that we go. It's the pattern that we go through when we want to initiate change in our lives or change is happening in some form. I just want to be, and we have to start with, so how does real change actually happen in human life, a leader or an organization? The idea cycle moves us through 4 interconnected stages. Okay. So this is a little backdrop on the idea cycle for you. So the first one is innovation, and it's how we create new responses. So how do I create a new response? By putting a stimulus in the room, or just how do I just create it in general before any stimulus? Development is how do we grow capacity? Education is how we learn and refine in this process. And administration is how we sustain and steward. So these are I would say the cycle, and the hows are the values of the cycle. Okay. So here's the part that I probably didn't teach very well, that we probably missed, or that you probably missed, right? The cycle does not start with innovation as an action. Innovation starts with awareness. Before something new can be created, something old must be seen clearly. So what was, you have to be aware of. So you do have to be aware of past. That's why I went through the whole story of shot putting, because I wasn't aware that I was a coach. Everyone else was, but I wasn't. So most people think innovation is new ideas, systems, new habits, and new strategies, just that. But it doesn't start with that. Those are the things that you do. It starts with perception and not motion. Before you do anything, where does it actually truly can be conceived, right? Where's the true conception of innovation? Because it's not with motion. It begins with perception. It's how things are perceived, right? First, innovation asks the first and most uncomfortable question. And you have to ask this. What's happening? What's happening right now? What's really happening right now? What is happening? And it's not what we hope is happening. It's not what we tell people is happening. And it's not what we wish was happening, but what is true. And awareness is the moment you stop performing and you actually stand back and start observing. You start observing. You start observing. So awareness is an initiative because it interrupts autopilot mode. So when you're going through something, and awareness is innovative because it interrupts autopilot. You can't just be on autopilot. Autopilot just means you're going about life in a routine, and you never take the top opportunity to take a step back and say, what's happening right now? What is happening to me right now? That's a great question to ask. So most people are not living with intentionality. You hear this word, do everything with intention. We always trained athletes and told them that everything that you do it with intention or focus. And we throw this blanket statement to drive and motivate called goals. We put those goals in as markers to meet expectations so that we produce intentionality in our athletes. That's what a goal is for. But a goal is not a vision. The goal is not ultimate. It's not the big thing. It's not the bigger picture. The big picture is creating this cycle that we can create a system, right? Systems are way more important than goals. Your system, the program itself, right? You set goals to meet certain timeline or markers within your system so that you could stay intentional about what you're doing. Therefore, you don't live reactionary or reactively. You're not living reactively because you have intentionality. So people who are not living with intentionality tend to repeat patterns. They normalize the dysfunction in their life. They say, oh, well, that's fine. This system's broken. So this is just the way it is. It's broken. Okay. And they rationalize. They try to justify not being in alignment. They try to justify I'm broke. Oh, I'm broke. I mean, they try to justify not going back to school. They try to justify not getting right with God. People be like, well, God don't love me. They rationalize malalignment, and then it's not even true. It's not even biblical. It's not even sound doctrine. We rationalize malalignment like, oh, my boss doesn't like me. No, your boss is trying to get you to do something that you haven't done before. And they're just as frustrated as you are because they see the potential in you, but you're not living intentional. You're reacting to everything that they're giving to you. Okay. Nothing changes because nothing is being acknowledged in your life. You have not acknowledged anything. And you want things to change. You're wondering what's happening to you, but you never take the time, first of all, to ask that question. So therefore, you haven't acknowledged that there needs to be a change in the first place. So instead, awareness is the moment when you say, this isn't working. I'm avoiding something. What am I avoiding? I've outgrown this version of myself. It's time for me to transition to the next, right? I'm functioning, but I'm not aligned. Something's off. I'll say that to myself, man, something's off. It doesn't feel right. It's time to innovate, Michael. It's time to create something. Time to create a new environment. Time to create an environment that you want to live in. You hear me say that? So in that moment you say that, that's innovation. That is true innovation, right? It's the start in your mind. It's that first stage of pre-contemplation, right? Because now you've introduced a new truth into an old system or way of thinking system of thinking, a systematic thought process that you've had for years, right? Now that you said, oh, wait a minute, this isn't working in your relationships. Now that you said, oh, wait a minute, something isn't working. I'm avoiding this conversation, right? I've outgrown that version of me, right? So you have to acknowledge that. So acknowledgement must come before action. Action without awareness creates exhaustion. So if you're just doing something, you don't know why, you're going to be exhausted because you don't understand. You don't have any meaning. You're doing it unfulfilled. You're doing this with no purpose in your life, which creates exhaustion. When you don't know the why, it just you can't formulate a plan. You can't innovate anything, right? And if you have action without awareness, it also creates burnout. Action without awareness also creates a false sense of progress. You're just spinning on a hamster wheel. It's that hamster wheel of life because you refuse to acknowledge what's happening in the room. Okay? You can work harder and still be misaligned. You can be productive and still be lost. You can be busy and still be stuck. Why is that? Because action without awareness is just motion. Acknowledgement is what gives you the direction. Trust in the Lord with all thy heart, lean not unto thy own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. That is for those who are lost, right? Use that as a reminder. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Lean not unto your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Because acknowledgement gives you direction. When you acknowledge reality, you stop fighting symptoms. You stop fighting the symptom. Oh, I got a cold. No. That's a result of something deeper inside of you. You got a cold. Why? Why do you have a cold? There's a virus in there. You have the flu because it's a virus. The symptom is a snotty nose and a cough. Why are you trying to treat that? Treat the virus. Do you really want to get better? So you want to acknowledge the fact that you have it. If you have streptococcal vitis, strep throat, don't you want to get antibiotics to treat the strep, not the sore throat? The sore throat ain't going to fix nothing. You need the antibiotics, huh? Okay? So when you acknowledge the reality, when you acknowledge where you're at, when you sit there long enough to acknowledge, yeah, this sucks. I don't want to do this again, right? You stop fighting that. You stop fighting the symptom of this sucks. And you figure out why it sucks. And you start addressing the root cause. Just know that when you address that root cause, your awareness does not make you weak. When you say this sucks, it does not make you weak. When you say, oh man, I failed, does not make you weak. A lot of people avoid awareness because they think it means I'm admitting to being a failure. I become a failure. It's exposing my flaws, right? Or they just don't like the losing control feeling that it comes with. They don't like the fact that it's not in their control for you control freaks. They don't like the fact that, oh, I feel exposed. I'm vulnerable. Oh my gosh, the vulnerability that's involved in it. They don't like the feeling. You strong-willed people, you. But awareness does not mean weakness. Again, I'll say that. Awareness is leadership. You have to lead from awareness. It's so funny because in Madden 99, the best players were 99 awareness players, right? Because they're aware. Those are the leaders on the team. So if you're playing Madden, the cheat code is to get a whole team full of aware folks. If you got a team full of aware folks, they don't miss a tackle. They are always on assignment. They get the picks and they get the sticks, if they know what I'm saying. Okay. So if you have a defense that is completely aware, they can read offenses. If you have an offense that's completely aware, they can read defenses because they're aware of every reaction that happens on the field. That's what you want to build. Don't worry about the speed. A guy with 99 awareness, tear up the team, tear up everything because he's aware. He knows where his blockers are. He knows where everything is. So it takes strength to tell the truth when denial is easier. True strength is being able to be honest with yourself when with others. Denying of self leads to conformity. So it's easier to deny and conform with the rest of the people than it is to just tell the truth and stand out and be the unique person that God created you to be. It takes courage to pause when momentum feels safer. Sometimes you got to take a break. You got to pause. Moving too quick or too hastily will lead you to ruin. Moving too fast will move you to ruin sometimes. You ruin relationships moving fast. For all the people catch the hint, right? Get the hint. Moving too quickly. You're giving him, you guys living and giving each other wife responsibilities with no commitment. Ouch. Men giving her husband responsibilities without her commitment. Ouch. Moving too fast. You're not walking together. You're running. You're running to the altar to a person you don't even know. For real. You may know them, but you don't know them. You don't understand them for real. And that takes time. So you can't do them just because it feels safe and because pastor says y'all can't do this. No, we need to take time to get to know each other first, right? That's just for relationships. But it takes courage to pause. It's hard to be honest with yourself and say, wait. I don't really know them. But they feel so good. I don't know them. I don't really know them. Pause. Wait a minute. I play a lot of video games. And my son and I, we play Sonic all the time. And in Sonic Generations and Shadow Generations, there's some levels with boss battles where you think that speed actually matters, and it doesn't. The way to S rank, it has nothing to do with time, but the momentum. Knowing when to slow down and when to speed up. Knowing when to stop and knowing when to go. That is so important because it feels safe to just blow through the levels, but you miss everything. I miss rings. I miss the red rings. I miss the chalos that I need to grab. All those things in those levels in those games, I miss because I'm trying to just be fast and because it feels safe and I can get through the level quick, right? I can blow through it and go all the way to the top of the map and just run it, right? But I miss all of the good stuff that the map is riddled with by doing that. It's not about being fast. And it takes maturity to say something needs to change. And I need to see it clearly. It takes maturity to say to yourself that I need to see this thing clearly first. Maturity chases clarity. Okay. If you want to be a secure person as we get older, as I've gotten older over my life, I want clarity, not chaos. I'm a man. I want peace. Okay. And so to get that, I need to see it clearly. I need to know exactly where you stand. Either you rocking or you rolling, if that makes sense. Either you're staying here or you're bouncing, right? Don't have time to sit there and play the guessing game and be in confusion. but it takes a mature person to say it. You have to say something needs to change right now, or something has to change, because it's easy to be complacent. And when you say something has to change, I bet you clarity happens in that moment. Unless you deal with a stubborn person who won't say nothing at all, just look at you. Open your mouth. Talk to me. What's happening? Awareness is the discipline of honesty. It's the discipline of honesty. So in the beginning of being honest with yourself, you have to start with being aware. Okay. You have to shift from reactions to intention. So once awareness enters the cycle, everything tends to change. You stop reacting and you start responding, right? You stop with emotion and you use discernment. You stop with just your habits. Oh, this is what I've always done. And you make choices. So this is where everything is intentional. So move your life. If you're a reactive person, just respond. If you're tied up in your emotions, use discernment. If you have habits, make choices instead. Turn your habits into choices. I can choose to do this or that. And in the way where you choose to do that, you're using discernment as well, and your response is more tailored. You're not just working off of impulse or intrusive thinking. Everything that you do is intentional. So you're no longer asking yourself, what should I do next? You say, what do I need to do next? You actually ask yourself, what do I need to change? Because the outcome that I got from doing got me to this point. And I don't like the outcome. Or maybe I do like the outcome, but it's not what I thought. And a lot of times I found with goals, that's what happens. You reach your goal and you're like, ooh, I'm here, but I'm at the top of the mountain, but it's not what I thought it was going to be. So we sit there and we say to ourselves, wow, this mountain looks bad. It took me all that just to get here. And I ain't even happy. That's because you've been asking this entire time, what should I do next? Not what should I change? Or what actually should I be changing in my life? That way it puts you back in alignment instead of always needing to do something about your life. What is it that I need to change about this situation? What do I need to change about myself? What do I need to change about my approach, how I talk to people? Maybe it's something maybe it's me. It should be a self-reflecting situation for yourself. Okay? If you start asking this question, I guarantee that you will save yourself years of wasted effort, exhaustion, burnout, everything. Just ask yourself what needs to change in the situation. Okay? No more wasted effort in 2026. Please say that to yourself for me. No more wasted effort in 2026. Okay? Awareness creates a space between stimulus and responses. So being aware gives you the time to be intentional. Okay? When change is coming towards you, it stimulates something inside of you. Most people react. You're getting yelled at. You get screamed at. The military does a great job of teaching this. Okay? Your drill sergeant yells at you. Blah, 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 blah. Move, private. Move, 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 move. Because a lot of people don't like being yelled at. They don't like the chaos. It teaches you calm in the midst of the storm. Because war is nasty. You're going to see things. But you've got to train your mind to push past the muck. That's why I love watching Marines. I love listening to guys who are in the military. I love that. That right there is the mindset. You know, yeah, it comes with a lot of different types of personality types, right? However, to take the principles that are taught from a discipline like that, it really gives the people space between the stimulus and the response. And let me tell you something about that space. It's sacred. Guard that space. That's what we need to protect, is that space. Okay. Because in that space, that's where God moves in the middle. Okay. Because God gives you gifts of wisdom, a leadership, and actually that's where you develop a mature space for innovation to occur. Okay. So in that space, wisdom lives there. Your knowledge, your understanding, and the application of that is where that lives in that space. Okay. How you lead and where you lead is formed there. So you're molded, you're developed in that. The leadership development is in that space between your stimulus and the response. Okay. So, because I'm going to say it again, without awareness, you react. Without awareness, you react. And with awareness, you choose. God wanted us to choose, right? If you eat of this tree, certainly you will die. You can have everything else. But if you eat of this tree, certainly you'll die. It's a choice he gave Adam. And you know what? The choice is the foundation of sustainable change. Because when Adam made the choice, he chose disobedience. He chose death. Essentially, it was what Adam chose. He chose death over abundance. And that was the foundation of the change of man, is now we are subject to die because of the choice. Okay? We chose death. So, how does this connect to the idea cycle as a whole? Because once awareness has been established, once you become more aware and intentional, your development becomes intentional growth, not forced improvement. So you choose in what areas you need to develop. You don't let that be imposed on you, because you're already aware of what needs to change. So now you know what needs to change. So now your growth and development is predicated on the choice that you make in the area that you want to grow and develop in. Education, the E in the idea, becomes meaningful learning, not just information overload. You're learning with a narrow scope. Okay? Again, it goes back to that same principle, because it's intentional. And your administration, your ability to manage stuff, it literally becomes stewardship and not control. Control is a traditional managerial model, right? Planning control, there's others. But in this, it becomes stewardship. Stewardship is something that you're entrusted. Somebody gives you something you're entrusted with, and you take it and you steward it in a way. You learn how to what it should be allocated towards, where areas need to be protected, what areas need to be improved, and you manage it so that it sustains life. It sustains the lives of others. It becomes an ecosystem of abundance, right? Administration is so important. People leave because of bad management, because people don't steward. Whatever you don't steward well, you will lose. And people who control people, right, don't necessarily understand that they will lose anything. They're okay with control because they'll find something else to replace it. But a steward is not interested in replacing something. They're interested in stewarding it, guiding, leading it, right? Allocating it correctly, making sure that it's okay, right? And here's the important part about these stages. None of them function properly without awareness. The whole cycle doesn't move without being aware. And this is why people learn but never change. So yeah, you can learn, but it's just information. You can grow, but you never become stable, right? You can build something, but you will never sustain what you build. And the reason is, without awareness, you enter into the idea cycle in the middle. You enter in basically in the middle of development. You enter in education. You just skip innovation at all. You're not even aware. You haven't even asked a question as to what you would like to change. So you enter into the cycle just mid. So real change begins with what you see. This is why I say innovation isn't always about doing something new. So remember, to innovate something, it's not about doing something new. It begins with seeing it clearly. When you have a path forward, you know where you're going. So you want to see that path clearly. And some of the patterns, if we want to change ourselves, you have to see patterns. You have to see the environment. You have to see your motives. You have to see your limits. You have to see your calling. All of that, patterns, environment, motives, limits, and calling, you have to see clearly in your life. Awareness is not the end of the journey, but it is the gateway. It is the gateway to it. So if you're a season where things just don't feel right and off, if you're trying harder, but it's just getting less clear, like you don't have the clarity that you're looking for. If you feel change is stirring, but you don't know what to do next, do not rush to action. Start with awareness. Because this is where the idea of change truly begins, is being aware. If this helps you slow down and see things more clearly, subscribe for thoughtful conversations on growth, leadership, and grounded change. We don't rush transformation at Macro Change. We don't rush the transformation process. I walk with you every step. So we build it. It's building. And you build it with one honest insight at a time. Looking forward to my next video. So, like I say, always make real change, make change real. The process is beautiful. Empower your mentality to make real change in the world. This is Coach King. Peace out.